let me just try to go through this part of the message, hopefully pretty quickly. So in the 1920s, we're talking about the beginning of the universe. That's what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about creation. We believe in the theory of creation. People believe in the, scientists believe in the theory of, it's not evolution, because you can believe in evolution and creation at the same time. Okay, evolution is something that happened after the world was created, right? So the difference between creation, theory of creation, what we believe, or religious people believe, the other side would be theory of, I don't know what you call it, instantaneous existence, or what they call the Big Bang. So for a long time, you have to understand, guys, for a long time, this idea of the Big Bang didn't even exist, okay? For most of our human history, the idea that the universe is getting bigger and bigger, and that it started from a little small dot called the Big Bang, what we call it, is actually was never around, because it's only in 1920 that Hubble telescope, you guys know about Hubble telescope, in 1920, from pictures that it took of the universe, it found out that the universe is expanding. That is, in other words, it's expanding away from us. And from that, scientists figured out that the world is growing. Okay, the world is continually, consistently growing. Okay, and it's growing from, and they found out that it's growing from a certain point, and it's growing outwards from that point. They don't know exactly where it is, does not matter, but they're saying they found out that it's expanding from a point. And it's, in other words, it's like a circle, like a balloon being blown up. What they did was, scientists, they made a theory then that the universe, because it's expanding like a balloon, then it had to, all the beginning of that expansion has to be a single point or a single dot where everything came from. That is the theory of the Big Bang, and that's how we believe that most people in this world, or scientists, believe that the world came through a Big Bang. It's actually just an explanation of what we see. And like I said, scientists can never prove the beginning of reality or existence, because no, you can't go there, right? Anyways, so the Hubble telescope and the theory of Big Bang started, and then Einstein. So from this, Einstein is the next person I guess you guys really want to talk about, right? When you're talking about scientists and the beginning of the world. So Einstein wanted to uh, develop a unified theory. And in other words, Einstein, from all these things that he learned about the universe and all physics and stuff, he wanted to create a way to reconcile the biggest and the smallest things in life. Okay, that's interesting, because what he wanted to do, for him, Einstein, it's important that he wanted to take the biggest thing, general relativity, which explains the biggest things, the universe or the world, and then quantum mechanics, which explains the smallest things in the world. He wanted to put that, he wanted to create a theory, a unified theory that would explain all of that, because that's how the world is. He wanted a theory that would explain what he saw, or what we experience now, that we could actually see it. So the Big Bang hypothesis, um, was able to lead to these experiments, because they made this theory. Now, from that point, scientists started doing experiments and things of this world, physics. That's why you have like the collider and all that stuff, trying to figure out if their theory is correct. Okay, so from that you have to understand, right? You can see that there has to be a lot of theories then about what the universe is, and from that, how the universe started. Okay, so the Big Bang is one theory, that how the universe started, but how and what does it look like when the Big Bang started? So that's the next question. And the person, I guess, to take this question in science about what the Big Bang looks like is, you guys know, right? A really famous person named Stephen Hawking. Okay, Stephen Hawking is the one in our, well, he just passed away, but in our modern history, he is the one that kind of, as people joke that he created time, because he almost he made a lot of theories about how the universe began and how time and space and all that stuff. If you look at the pictures, you guys know it's a singularity. Singularity is the point that where all things start. James Hartle and Stephen Hawking in 1983, this is a long time ago, guys, long time ago, they created this theory model. Okay, I'm not going to explain this all to you because I am not a physicist. I am not a professional in this field, so I don't understand it exactly. And even if I did, I couldn't explain it to you guys very easily because I'm not a physicist. But what this is, the important thing about this is that their theory is that it started from a point, but at this point, Stephen Hawking um, believed in a singularity scenario, and he believed in what was called a no boundary proposal. Okay, so at this point in time, in the 1980s, Stephen Hawking believed that in the beginning of time, there was no boundary, such things as time, space, those things simply did not exist. They just came to exist once the Big Bang happened. Okay, and this is and what they always say is that the expansion of the universe started, and it was really big at first, and then it slowed down, and we're kind of like in the slowing end part of the world's, I guess, blow up or Big Bang or whatever you want to call it, right? Why am I explaining all this? I am not a physicist. This is not, this is not a science class. I just wanted to get to the point that Stephen Hawking, before he died recently, he made another um, theory. Okay, this is called what he called the mirror theory. Okay, Hawking and Hartog, two physicists, their newest theory is that time is the fly in the ointment. So the time is the problem, keeping cosmic inflation from aligning with general relativity. So what they did was uh, they said the moment after Big Bang, when inflation occurred, they put it as a timeless state. So they said time does not exist. Okay. Anyways, very, very complicated stuff. I don't know this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to see a short little video on um, this theory called mirror um, something. I forget. I even forget. It's really weird. Anyways, let's watch this little video on um, Stephen Hawkins.
Back in the early 1970s,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's sound. Okay,
Hawking
cool.
wrote down an astonishing equation. It would include relativity, it would include quantum mechanics, and it would include information. Hawking's rather simple equation brought us a step closer to understanding the relationship of quantum physics and black holes.
When an object crosses over the edge of a black hole, its event horizon, the object enters a realm basically of empty space, of darkness, and it continues to be dragged toward the center of the black hole, toward what we call the singularity, where it gets crushed out of existence. Every object, in some sense, contains information because it contains a very specific arrangement of particles. So where is the information that describes the arrangement of those particles? Where does it go?
Hawking's description of this process was that the energy remains, but the information disappears.
For many years, for decades, people wondered, is Hawking right? Is the information obliterated and disappears from the universe, or is it still there and perhaps can be in some way retrieved?
The destruction of information was counterintuitive, and it didn't match the rest of the things we knew. In all parts of physics, we had a situation where information doesn't get destroyed. So it was a bit puzzling.
This debate furiously went back and forth up through the 80s and into the 90s when people finally began to articulate this new principle, this holographic principle. And what it said is that all the things that were falling inside a black hole were somehow captured in a preserved image at the horizon itself.
So if the information is not lost on the surface, the information is not lost inside because they are equivalent.
All the information about those objects, what they were like in their three-dimensional existence, was preserved or encoded on the surface of the black hole. And that's a little bit like a hologram.
Well, that suggests that maybe that idea may apply more broadly to the universe as a whole. Maybe the three-dimensional objects, us, everything in the world around us, maybe all of the information in these objects is carried, is smeared around a distant two-dimensional surface that surrounds us, and we're just in some sense a holographic projection of that distant data.
The holographic principle tells us something quite astonishing. It says that our ideas of volume, of the real world in a sense, might be a kind of illusion.
I don't know about you guys, but videos like that confuse me more than anything give me explanation, right? I mean, it's very confusing, but the point that the most, I think, important point of the video for us is what they talked about at the end. It's interesting how they talked about the holographic principle that a lot of physicists follow now. Isn't it interesting how they talk about how this world may be a holographic image of some distant information? To me, that kind of sounds like we're God's imagination, right? We call it God because we believe that God is an intelligent being. But if we just follow the scientists, it's a source of energy with all the information of this world projecting that energy for our existence. It's the information and energy behind our existence. That's what they're saying with the holographic principle. So for me, it just feels like God is the source of that information. In the beginning, we don't know what happened, right? Anything before anything else, though. In a lot of the theories that we see with the physicists and the modern theories that I noticed, it's important that even the physicists say that before the Big Bang, they don't know. Scientists don't even talk about what happened before the Big Bang because it's impossible to know. But they all kind of assume and they kind of accept the fact that the big world, the new universe before the Big Bang, a lot of them say was like this big soup of energy or matter that kind of was. But the most important thing is that most scientists and most physicists explain or accept the fact that the universe did not need to be created. That the world, or whatever it was before the Big Bang, was content. Okay, it was not the Big Bang didn't happen because there was something wrong. Big Bang didn't happen. The world wasn't created because there was something off and it was needed. It was not a requirement. The creation of this universe, in other words, is not a requirement. Even physicists believe that this world was not created out of some type of requirement. The research the experiments that we do on this earth, even or on this world, on this physical world, shows us that our world came to be really out of nothing. The beginning is a very gray area because that's what it is. The beginning is unknown. See, what does that say then? What does that say? If the whole universe was never needed and things were content, then it says something happened. Something had to have happened. Something had to have happened that made this world to appear, right? The world did not just appear out of nothing. I guess that's what the physicists and the scientists believe because that's all you can say because that's all they know. And what I would like to say, and what religion says, and what Christians say, and what we say is that what was before the Big Bang? Okay, who knows how the world? We could argue about how the world came to be. Okay, that's another day. But right now we're talking about what was before. We have to say that God was before, and that's what we believe. This is what separates us from the rest. That we believe that God, the one God that we believe in still, the one with the mind, the one with the thought, the one with love, the one with the heart, all of that, that God was before. I can't say God was who because he's not a person. Can't say God was what because he's not a thing. All we could say is God was in his way. He existed. He was content, in other words. That's what I'm saying. God was, and he just was. There was no need for God to create. There was no need. Nothing was wrong that made God create. And it's important that we know that we, okay, it's important for us to know that we were planned. We are not just things that pop up out of the ground. Human beings are not souls that just pop out of the ground like with no plan. In Jeremiah chapter 1:5, God says to Jeremiah, he says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. See, important here is that before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And in other words, what that means is if God knows us before we are even formed in the womb, in other words, before you were conceived, that means who we are, right? Our souls, our spirits, our identity exists before we are born. Before we are born, we already have existence. We already have identity. And in other words, we already know God. Because if we don't have an identity, you can't be known. You may not know God, but he knows you. And in other words, he already planned us. What does that mean? We were already created. You have to be created before in order to be formed in the womb. Okay? Spirits and souls are not simply just created every time someone is born. That is not a Christian view. Why is that not a Christian view? Because in the book of Revelations, chapter 4 and 17, there's these verses that says, I heard a number of those who were sealed, 444,000 from all the tribes of Israel. And then in chapter 14, it says, then I looked and saw the Lamb standing on the Mount of Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. And it goes on. The 144 who had been redeemed from the earth. What this is talking about is that from this picture, we see that there's a specific number. Okay, in chapter 7, it goes on to explain how many people from each tribe are going to be saved. If there's a specific number of people that are going to be saved, then there has to be a specific number of people that are going to be not saved. And if there's a specific number of people that are going to be saved, then that has to be a certain percentage of the whole, meaning if there is a number that is already planned to get into heaven, then God has to have a plan for the total amount of souls. In other words, there has to have been already a total amount of souls that God had created. Okay? And because there's the idea of predestination and the fact that God had planned all this, and the fact that God says he will not destroy the world, okay, until all people have seen the message, shows that there is a limitation, not a limitation, that there's an actual number of souls, a finite number, not an infinite number of souls, a finite number of souls that God had created. The number of souls God created has still, to me, it means that the number of souls that God created has still not run out. Why? Because the world hasn't ended. To me, it feels like the world will end. It's just mathematics, guys. To me, it's simple mathematics. If there's an actual number of souls that God had created, the world cannot end until all those souls are born, right? Or the question is, are human beings born in heaven, in the next world, in the next in the next life, in the next world, where this world will be remade and Jerusalem and earth will be remade. The question is, are human beings still born? Right? If human beings are not born anymore, if the number of human beings stop before the end of this or the judgment of the world, then it must be that all the souls created by God at the beginning of the creation must all be born before the end of the world. That is a side note, but what I'm saying is it's important. The Bible tells us that the Bible seems to say that there is a finite number of people in the world. There's a finite number of souls. And the important thing is that we believe in the soul, because if we don't believe in the soul, then we are just humans. We are human beings. We're just like animals. Like, we will follow along the belief and thinking of the rest of the world, that we are simply born. We're just here. We just appear. We just come to this world because we have physical human fathers and mothers, and we're just a creation, or not the creation. We're just a result of two people or two animals procreating. That's what animals are. But if you believe that we have human souls, that we are actually separate, that we are all unique uh, people, right? Humans with souls within infinity, then it changes the whole story. It changes the whole story. Why? Because why do I say that the souls had to have been created before the physical earth was created? Because we look at angels. This is the next question, right? God created the angels before he created the rest of the physical world. Okay, we don't know exactly what it said when he created the angels. It doesn't say in the Bible exactly when he created the angels, but we know from this verse and some other verses that the angels were there. They were physically present when God created the world. Because over and over again it says the angels, right? The morning stars and the sons of God shouted for joy when God was creating the world. The angels celebrated God for his wisdom and his greatness during that creation period. And in other words, the angels were there. So the spiritual forces, spiritual beings of this world were created before the physical ones of this world. So, okay, so if the angels were created during that time, then other spiritual animals or other spiritual created things of this world must have been created during that time too. When, what exactly period? Some people believe that in this verse, right, in the verse that we read today, Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to 2, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It says heavens and the earth. Yet, right after that, it says the earth was without form and void. Notice it doesn't say anything about heaven. Some people believe, some theologians believe that this is because the heavens were created already. You see, the heavens were already filled in. The heavens, including all the angels and all the souls of man and all the Nephilim, not Nephilim, all the seraphim and all the greatness of heaven already were formed first. And then God created the earth. And so the story of Genesis is our story, our human story of how the earth was created, but we don't get a story of how heaven was created because that's not for us to know. Okay, so whether angels were created in the first day, in the very, very first day, right before all the other physical things, or whether they were created much, much before it, we don't know. But all we know is that the spiritual beings were created before the physical. Okay, and since God rested at the end of 7 days, it signifies his end of the act of creating. Okay, we must assume that nothing else has been created, right? God rested at the end of 7 days. If he's rested, that means he's done. That was the point. It's not like God was tired. Okay, it was a sign to us and to all of creation itself. God was saying, I'm done. I'm done. Be good, have peace. Just sit and be good, be well. And that was what God was saying by creating this world and saying on the seventh day, let there be rest. He's saying, I am done. So if the spiritual forces, spiritual world, and the angels were created before the physical world, what does that mean then? That means human beings, all the human beings, all the spiritual beings that exist in this world had to be created before the physical world. And in other words, that's why I believe that there has to be a finite number of human souls that are going to be born, because they were created before the physical world. Now the physical world has been created. So there are no more spirits, no more human souls out there that can become, that can be made, right? This is what we call the law of conservation, right? Science is just a reflection of God's laws. Don't forget. So the law of conservation is just another law or rule that God set for this world. And God, one of the rules that God set is that energy cannot be created or destroyed, because that is who He is. Energy simply changes because, think about it. If all the energy in this world and all the power and all the energy source comes from God, then it cannot be destroyed. You cannot destroy God. It goes and it comes back to Him, and then it goes out from Him, right? Energy is not some energy, you use and you use, and then it's just, you use and then it's done. Okay? It's God Himself. You cannot undo that. It can only change. So that's why we have the law of conservation of energy in this world. And that's why I say, in the same way, we could only have a certain number of human souls in this world, because there is a conservation. So God must have created man's soul after the creation, right? Souls were created before they're containers, right? Our physical body, this world, our physical existence, physical body and physical whatever, intellectual, all that stuff is our container for our souls, right? So if you're creating something, you have to create the thing that's going to go in first before you create the outside. That might sound backwards to some people, but even if not in chronological order, in meaningful order of creation, we were actually created before anything else. This is what I'm trying to get to. This is the point that I'm trying to get to. Okay, the message I'm trying to get to today is the fact, that we were not created on the sixth day as the last thing. Okay, God did not choose to create a universe and then chose to stick us in that universe. Do you understand what I'm saying? Here, let me say that again. God did not choose to create a world. God did not choose to create a dimension. God did not choose to create a multiverse, or whatever you want to call it. Creating a universe was not His purpose. He was not trying to create like a little world for him to watch and enjoy. And oh, look how fun that is. Okay, he was not trying to create a toy. So the image of gods that we see in a lot of other religions is the fact that gods create this world. When if they create the world, it's like a little toy or something that they like to look at. Okay, the world is what they created. What I'm trying to say is that God didn't. The purpose of His creation was not the world, because the purpose of His creation, if you look and notice, He created the angels and gods and humans before us, and then He created the world, right? Look at the story of creation. He is creating a house for humans. Okay. Now I say this all the time. Like if you're building a house for someone, what do you do? Do you take the person, plant them in the middle of the empty lot, say stay there, sit there, just wait, and then we'll build a house around you? No, you don't do that. You build a house, and then you get the person to come in and live. In the same way, God had already prepared our house before he put us in. That's how the order is. We are created in the sixth day. It's not the fact that we came at the end. It's not like God created, he's like, oh, let me create the sky, let me create the dirt, let me create animals. And then at the end, oh, you know what? I think we need little human beings to run around. Do you understand? We were not the result of the order of creation. We are not like the smartest of all the animals that were created. We are not like the best of all the creation. Okay, it was not like a procession. It wasn't like God created the plants, animals, and then he was like, you know what? Let's top it off. We need something at the top here. We need something to make the earth kind of pretty good. You know, we need something to make it perfect. And he was like, oh, let's make human beings. It wasn't like that. The story of the Bible that we see was that God loves us. He loved us from the beginning. He chose us from the beginning. He wanted us from the beginning. So he created us from the beginning. In other words, God created us. Why? To be with us, right? If God wanted to be with us, then he chose to have us. This is the important part I wanted to get to. God chose. Chose. God chose to have us. He didn't choose to create a world. He didn't choose to create, something that he can toy with. He chose to create us. God chose to give us souls. God chose to give us personalities and emotions. God chose to give us eternal imaginations and infinite souls. See, God chose to give us individuality, and he chose to give us eternity. He chose to do it he chose to give it to us just like he has. Okay? God chose to give us freedom and possibility, infinite possibility, just like he does, just like him. See, God chose to make us like him. God chose, in other words, from the beginning, God chose to have us as his children. God did not create us to be animals. Why did God create us? Why did God create the world? The God of the Bible is a father God who created for himself a people, a family, a children whom he could love because they would be a part and a reflection of who he is. Because that is the only way that he could love. What is the gospel of our very existence? What is the gospel of creation itself? What is the gospel of the void before all things came into this world? And the gospel of the void, the gospel of creation is that we exist. We came to be because God, the supreme deity, wanted us. We exist to be loved. We were created not because God wanted experiments to test on. He didn't, not because he wanted servants to boss around, right? Not because God wanted creatures to keep like livestock or entertainment. We were created to be God's companion and lover and family for the same reason that young couples wish to become parents. This is the same type of wish, this is the same type of desire that God had when he created the world. See? God was not creating the world like he was some mechanic or engineer trying to build some thing that was nice to look at. He was a father, he was a mother, he was a parent trying to love, seeking to create something. That's what parents do, right? They seek to create. Well, not create, right? They make their own baby, but it feels like creation for them. They seek to create something they want to love. They want to love. It's right. It's not they're trying to get something out of the baby. They want to make a baby so they can love it. That's an odd thing if you think about it. But it makes sense to us because that's why God created the world. See, the world was created as a honeymoon suite. The world was not created um, as a battleground. The the world was not created as a testing ground. The world was not created as um, a place of boredom or pain. The world was actually first created as a honeymoon suite. Think about it, right? God came down and he walked amongst us because he wanted to. God desires to be with us. Okay. Right now, the suite, the hotel room is filled with a bunch of drunks, and just the hotel suite is just messed up. It's just burning down. The whole thing is burning down. But that's the room that we live in. This world we live in. We must understand it was a place that God wanted to share with us. See, the universe was first created as to be a gift of love from God to us. Our gospel rests upon the sacrifice of the Son, but the work of the Son is gospel because the will of the Father was always good. In other words, the work of the Son is good news. Good news. Because the Father behind the Son always wanted good. In other words, God the Father always designed for the world to be good to us. See, what that means is, in the end, then, is that our existence should be celebrated. Celebrated. Because the goal and purpose, essence, desire, center, base, foundation, core, the very being of our existence is blessed and loved. Because we were brought into the existence of this world to be loved and blessed, guys. We were not created to be anything else. Why were we created? This is a question that we must all ask ourselves. Why are we here? Why do we exist? Why do I live? Right? Do I live to work? A lot of people believe we live to work. We live to do things. We live to, you know, leave something behind. The world is full of pain and suffering, but that is not what God had intended when he dreamed of this world for us. That is important. He moved himself. Don't forget, he was content. The existence was content before we came into being, but he moved himself. He moved himself and all of existence. He created. He created. He changed everything in order for him to love us. Do you understand? We can never fully know why this life is so broken. Of course, it's because of sin, but we can never fully know why we are so broken. But we must remember that the world we were destined to be in when God first created the world is a blessed life. Okay, we must celebrate that. It is the same blessed life that we are promised. Okay, it's the same blessed life that we are promised in the future. So that's why we celebrate. That's why we have hope. But the same good world that God created will return to us. And this is the promise and this is the hope that we look forward to. Without this hope, this world is too much full of pain. And the final point is this: if God was not good in the beginning, guys, then we cannot expect him to be good at the end. If God was not good at the beginning, he could not be good at the end because he never changes. But our God shows himself to be good at the end because the gospel is a God who wants to love and be loved. It's an odd thing if you think about it. That one who did not need anything and not want anything sought to love and to be loved. In fact, that's the ultimate mystery, the greatest and the most powerful being in all of everything, all of it. We can't even say existence because there can be something outside of existence. The greatest and the most powerful force and being in all everything chose to be vulnerable. Do you understand? The most powerful being chose to be powerless to us, before us, in front of us. The most wise being chose to be foolish for us. And the one without end, the one without the one who could not be killed, chose to be killed for us. That is the gospel. God chose to create this world for me and for you. And that was not enough. He loved us even so much that he brought us into this world. And then he sent his son so that we could stay in his love. That's why we celebrate this life. As Christians, we celebrate this life because this is a great, great gift. It's an awesome gift that God has brought to us. Our existence, our life in this world is not something that we should take lightly. It is a great gift. The fact that we exist in this world shows how much God loves us. Let's pray.